Welcome to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. The reception of Robert Temple, the Sirius Mystery, has been really good. There have been many people who said they want me to continue this fascinating exploration of the ancient UFOs, as well as potential connections with today's UFOs. The good news on the horizon is I think there is a connection. What we're dealing with here, however, is a myriad of varying interpretations, without question, from scholars of all types. Everyone is jumping on this bandwagon, and they have been doing so since the 1990s. Good news on the horizon for me personally, and for you. You will be benefiting from this as well. I received Temple's new book today, A New Science of Heaven, about the heavens being 99% plasma. I am going to read this book carefully. I'm going to come back and share my ideas, my beliefs, my feelings, my interpretations, etc., with what Temple says in this brand new book. So he's doing like what I want to do with this UFO subject. Now, yes, I like reporting the UFO news. There's no question about that. And I also really like updating information on current events with the UFO world. There's no question about it. It is affecting us here and now. But to delve into the history of the UFOs is also, from my thinking, a very serious necessity. And so I do so. I'm looking at all aspects of UFOs. Let's get on with it. Let's not dawdle. Professor Wallace Budge practically owned the field of Egyptology in the late 1800s into the middle of the 1900s. Probably not that late, but close enough. He makes this interesting observation: the throne or the seat is the first sign in the name of Osset, who is the female counterpart of Osiris. Now, Osiris is going to be the main Egyptian deity in the entire pantheon and mythology. It is one of the most famous and well-known myths, reenacted constantly through their philosophy and their rites. It is very probable that originally the same conception underlay both of these names. Osiris, as the husband of Isis, was identified with the constellation Orion, a very important constellation, which in association with Lepus, the hare, and Canis Major, the dog constellation, in which Sirius is the main star. You follow the three stars of the belt of Orion and follow them all the way down, and the bright star down there is Sirius, and that is the constellation. And then next to it is the overwhelmingly gigantic Argo boat, and it is an amazing constellation as well. All of these sky constellations have to do with the history and the mythological and the ritual and the religious and the philosophical and the scientific basis of the ancient Egyptian religion for 2,500 years. It was a stable society. Now, to give you a very interesting contrast, our society has existed not even 300 years yet, and we are already on the brink of total destruction. That is how insane we have become as a society. We need to wake up. Perhaps the UFOs are going to help us. In the meantime, we get some historical context. So he gives the following hieroglyphic forms of Osiris, various different hieroglyphic forms, from the hieroglyphic texts of all periods. It doesn't matter what date now either. Of the dynastic history of Egypt, we learn that the god of the dead, this Osiris fellow par excellence, was the god whom the Egyptians called by a name which may be tentatively translated and transcribed Asar or Usar, commonly known to us as Osiris. The oldest and simplest form of the name is with a throne above a full eye. So, it's written by means of two hieroglyphs, the first of which represents a throne, the other an eye, but the exact meaning attached to this particular and unique combination of the two pictures by those who first used them to express the name of the god Osiris and the significance of the name, we have no idea what they were putting these together for. It's a very interesting combination. There's a great elaboration of what Asar does not mean, referring to the use of puns which particularly delighted Egyptian priests. 2 pages later, he winds up by saying, the truth of the matter seems to be that the ancient Egyptians knew just about as little of the original meaning of this name as we do, and they had no better means of obtaining information about it than we have, because this name, Osiris, is a very ancient name. It was not maybe even invented in Egypt. So the Bozo tribe in Mali, who are cousins to the Dogon tribe, who have presented us this interesting information on the star Sirius system with a companion to Sirius A, the heavy white dwarf Sirius B, which is virtually invisible to the naked eye, but they knew about it without telescopes. Well, their cousins, they described this white dwarf, this Sirius B, as the eye star. Interesting, huh? And here we see the Egyptians designating Osiris by an eye for reasons which are not clear just yet. And Osiris is the companion of the star Sirius. Well, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. The Bozo tribe also describes Sirius A as seated. And a seat is the hieroglyphic sign for Isis, who is Osiris's sister wife. Very interesting. A little later, Bud says in some passages, Osiris is referred to simply as God, without the addition of any name. No other gods of the Egyptians was ever mentioned or alluded to in this manner. And so this is one of the things that does set off Osiris. And no other god at any other time in Egypt has ever occupied the exact same exalted position that this god and his sister wife also occupied. And this adds to his peculiar attributes. He adds the plague of Hamaka proves that a center of the Osiris cult existed at Abydos under the First Dynasty. Now, the First Dynasty is way back. We're talking 3200 BC or earlier. But we're not justified in assuming that the god was first worshipped there, because it's difficult not to think that even under the First Dynasty, shrines had been built in honor of Osiris at several places in Egypt already by their First Dynasty. So this is really ancient. So the symbol of Isis in the heavens, she is often depicted in the hieroglyphs with the star sept. And this is greatly beloved because its appearance marked the beginning of the new year, for one thing, but it also announced the advance of the inundation of the Nile over that large, huge, flat area of Egypt, which gave it fertility so that they could grow millions of tons of grain and literally feed the rest of the known world because of that water. Very important aspect. I mean, without the Nile, there wouldn't have been in Egypt. There's no way. So, and this betokens the renewed wealth, health, prosperity of the country, of course. So Isis is regarded as the companion of Osiris, whose soul, this is important, whose soul dwelt in the star called Sa, S-A-H, Sa. In other words, Orion. Now, there's an interesting connection. That's very interesting. Because Orion being the companion of Sirius, and Sirius B, actually the smaller, invisible one with the naked eye, we've seen it now with our telescopes, being the heavy one, the Suhal al-Wazan, the Camonopus ponderosus, is how the Arabs depicted it, meaning a very weighty star. And being a white dwarf, of course, it's exploded off all its matter, and all of the atoms have mashed in, and just 1 teaspoon of the matter off of Sirius B would weigh over 2,000 tons. See, this is something we can't even comprehend. It's beyond. You go, wow, that's science fiction, except it's right up there in the sky, 8.7 light years away in reality. See, we don't, how do you grasp, how do you deal with something like that? Well, you don't. But they knew about it. So this is interesting. So let me keep going here. What I want to do is share a very excellent summary of the whole kibosh with this Egyptian theme, because Osiris is going to play a part in this tale all the way through, as will Isis, the great goddess. And you'll notice that it's not this is not a patriarchy versus a matriarchy at all. This is a combined rulership / worship / philosophy of both kinds. And that is really critically important. So let me share a basic interpretation, because we are talking about when one of the myths is that, and the Hopis also have this myth, is when we die, our souls go back to Sirius, where we came from. Now, that's intriguing. We have an ascension, as it were, up into heaven, into the Sirius system. So, Algis Uzdavnis, one of my favorite philosophers, philosophy as a rite of rebirth, gives us the grand poopah, big overall picture that I have kept in mind ever since I first read this, and it has always come back to support the theme of philosophy, of religion, of history, etc. And here it is: the main task of philosophy remains essentially the same. What is the point? Which, of course, so many and much of our modern philosophy has completely lost sight of, because it's dropped down into the materialistic scientific grit of the universe and lost the greater essence of the reality, which maybe it could come back through several of our new uprising philosophers in consciousness studies. But here is the main theme of philosophy. Now, and you hear the great names: Plato, Socrates, Parmenides, Isocrates, Eusebius, etc. You get up into the Jewish Maimonides, in the medieval ages, the Christian church fathers, philosophy. Thomas Aquinas, the great medieval Christian philosopher, etc. Philosophers, I mean it. That's the philosophy I'm talking about, that Uzdavnis shows in 400 pages. Fantastic material. Here is the point, and the reason I'm emphasizing this and making sure you understand this is because philosophy has dovetailed, dodged off, lost its trail into this thing they call nihilism because they can't comprehend the spiritual. And it is to their loss. But if they dominate the discourse, then it is to our loss if we don't understand and keep in mind in a historical perspective the purpose of philosophy, which is to change perverted human nature, to transform it, eventually leading it to happiness and to a restored divine identity. The task is, in fact, directly inherited from the ancient philosophies. That is, from the cosmogonic theories, think Plato's Timaeus, yes, systems of archetypal symbolism, the mysteries of death, transformation, and spiritual rebirth. And the archetypal symbolism and ritualized exercises of the normative divine life. Life, here, now, in the material, is supposed to be divine. We've just fallen asleep to that. The purpose of philosophy is to wake us up to that much larger overarching reality of which we are, whether we like it or not. Algisus Davnes, one of the most important books on the planet, in my opinion. Get this book. From ancient Egypt to Neoplatonism, philosophy as a rite of rebirth. There's his name, Algisus Davnes. Get it. You won't regret it. I promise. That is a high and mighty powerful book recommendation. Now, another one that I personally really enjoyed, although it is damaged interiorly, I've got to get a new copy, is Jeremy Nadler, Shamanic Wisdom in the Pyramid Texts, the mystical tradition of ancient Egypt. And by now you're asking, what in the hell does this have to do with UFOs? It has everything to do with UFOs, as we just saw a couple of days ago in Ross Coulthart bringing forth the eyewitness Barber when he shared his experience with being connected to a being whose craft he was picking up or looking at, the 8-gon or whatever he called it, an octagon. And he had a connection, and that connection filled him with love, and it blew his mind. Now, that is what the documentary should have focused on. That is what I heard it, but I was so miffed by the video footage that many of you said, yes, I missed the point. Well, yes, I did. But now that I've gone back and rewatched it, and I'm retracking, and I'm trying to comprehend the larger picture, which is always essential. Don't ever just jump to a conclusion and hang on to that for dear life as if that's the truth, because I'm constantly having to readjust my own view, which is a good thing because I'm finite. I can't possibly have the final word on truth any more than anybody else can, right? So this connection is the real thing. And it's very interesting. I want to read from Jeremy Nadler what he says in the Egyptian, because through time we've lost our understanding of the indelible imprint of Egypt on all of our world cultures to this day. Sincerely. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who say, dude, you are way out there. I am trying to bring it back home because we have lost the connection. So this is interesting. The soul at the point of death has the same experience as those who are being initiated into the great mysteries anciently. And this was the point of the ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Greek literatures, the Eleusinian mysteries, the mysteries of Mithras, later on in the Romans, the greater Christian mysteries, the ancient Jewish mysteries of the First Temple Judaism. This is the ancient pyramid texts, the coffin texts, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is the key to understanding what reality is, and it's something that 95% of our people have never even heard of. We are lost at sea with who we are, with what we are, with how to get back into tune with what we are. And there just might be an interesting potential here based on what I've heard from Barber, the Eyewitness in Cult Hearts documentary, based on what I've read and heard and listened to and watched of Chris Bledsoe and Ryan Bledsoe, of how the ETs are contacting us. Even Steve Greer, love him or hate him, has indicated the importance of recognizing that contact with ET is essential to understand their motives, and they are not evil. Well, how did they do this anciently? In fact, Temple describes how the ancient beings from a faraway place came to Earth and taught mankind the mysteries of reality, how to do agriculture, how to eat healthy, how to stay in communication with the Creator, how to understand the cosmos and the heaven, because we are all a part of that cosmos and heaven. We're just grounded on this earth at this point. This is what we've lost. And perhaps the UFOs are what's going to give it back to us, because we can't regain it by ourselves, apparently. Therefore, the mysteries bring it home. But we have to prepare ourselves for those mysteries. Well, just show me and get it over with. Nope, you're out. Go stay lost. That is not how the mysteries worked. Sorry, wrong answer. Plutarch was referring to either the Eleusinian mysteries or the Hellenist mysteries of Isis, or probably both. Yeah, even Isis was widespread throughout the Roman Empire in Jesus's day. That was one of the great mystery cults spreading over millions of peoples all over the place. Asia Minor, Persia, Phrygia, all over the Hellespont, everywhere. Egypt, Rome, everywhere. While some scholars have been very cautious in making any pronouncements as to what actually occurred in the initiations of Eleusis, others have been more willing to follow through the implications of the various testimonies that have come down to us. According to Carl Karenyi, who is one of the premier scholars of the ancient mysteries, the climax, the purpose, the point, what you go to the Eleusinian mysteries for, is a beatific vision, comparable to the medieval Christian mystical visio beatifica. It was, that is to say, a mystical seeing that conferred upon the initiate a certain beatitude. This is what we don't have in our society. It's no wonder we become so greedy and money hungry and devilish. I know I'm starting to sound like a preacher. Be that as it may, this is the point Walter Burkett has suggested that of the things shown, the dromena, to the initiates at Eleusis during the nocturnal ceremonies, that is, the nighttime ceremonies, the most important was a certain insight into the nature of death. It's something we hardly ever talk about or think about today. We are horrified by it because we've lost the true understanding and interpretation of death, right? We have, by contrast, by way of contrast, the overly literalistic interpretations of commentators, both ancient and modern, who have held that things shown were simply ritually charged objects like an ear of wheat or a representation of a phallus. It seems far more likely that the Hierophant enabled the initiate to glimpse a transcendent reality, which, as Cicero put it, showed up how to live in joy and how to die with better hopes. And what was the comment by Barber in the Cult Heart documentary when he had that being connect with him? He felt overwhelming joy. I could stop here and call it a day. That's the whole idea. We don't have that today in our hustle bustle world because we've been so brainwashed by the commercials on TV and the stupid bullshit junk out there that they have us convinced we have to have, that we spend all of our days making enough money so that we can go give it to someone else so that we can buy plastic junk and believe that fulfills us. That's how warped we have become. And it is time to wake up. And my suspicion, this is all me. So, quote me at your own risk. Nobody's going to believe you anyway, because nobody believes what I say. And I can't blame them because I am so finite myself. But the ETs are here to help us wake up. You heard it here right on the BYP channel. So anyway, that's Jeremy Nadler. I won't dawdle on that. And then finally, the Mysterium Lectures. Edward F. Edinger, a superb scholar who wrote a commentary on Carl Jung, the Mysterium Connuncionis, his magnificently gigantic, thick, huge book. Yes, I've even got it. I will even pull a backyard professor and bring it out to show you. This is one of the most tremendous books of all tremendous books, The Mysterium Connuncionis by Carl Jung. It is huge. It's like 700 pages, man. It's gigantic. It's humongous. Tremendous read. In this series of lectures, Edinger notes about the Osiris myth, which is so important. And again, this is all background. You say, yeah, come on, dude, you've lost your rocker. This had nothing to do with the UFOs. This has everything to do with the UFOs. There's the catch. It's not the UFOs of our scientific emphasis. It's something much more all-inclusive and grand. It far surpasses this mere speck of dust we call Earth. This little baby encompasses the cosmos. Come on, that's pretty good woo-woo, right? So Edinger says this: the death and the rebirth of Osiris is probably the most basic of the classical myths which pertain to the symbolism of the king's rejuvenation. I'll just remind you of the central feature of this story. It has a double form, It's interesting, a double form. According to one version, the evil figure Set traps Osiris in a chest and then he throws it out to the sea. Eventually, the chest washes up on the shores of Byblos and is incorporated into a great tree. That's what we call the Seleucio version of the myth. On the other version, which is a separatio version of the myth, Set dismembers Osiris into 14 fragments, which are then scattered throughout the entire world. Then in both versions, Isis, the sister wife of Osiris, rescues or retrieves Osiris, and she reconstitutes him. She gathers together all the missing fragments, all except the phallus, which has been swallowed by a fish. She has to make a wooden replacement of that. The child Horus is then conceived by the reconstituted Osiris, and Horus thus becomes the rejuvenated king. Now, this is a myth. It's not meant to be taken literally, but it's got some very intriguing symbolism. So let's go to the summary of the Sirius Mystery. The star Sirius was the most important star in the sky to the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptian calendar was based on the rising of Sirius, and they lived by this calendar for a very long time. It is established for certain that Sirius has sometimes identified by the ancient Egyptians with their chief goddess Isis. So the companion of Isis was Osiris, the great Egyptian god. The companion of the constellation of the great dog, which Sirius is in, Canis Major, was the constellation of Orion. So we see not only are the two deities conjoined, but the two constellations are joined, with the most important stars are joined, and Isis is equated with the star Sirius. The companion of Isis must be equated equally with the companion of Sirius. Osiris is thus equated on occasion with the very constellation of Orion. Interesting. We know that the companion of Sirius is in reality Sirius B, the white dwarf, the dark, heavy one. It is conceivable that Osiris as Orion, the companion of Sirius, is a stand-in for the invisible star Sirius B. The oldest and simplest form of the name of Osiris, we are told, is a hieroglyphic of a throne and an eye. The eye aspect of Osiris is thus fundamental, and the Bozo tribe of Mali, related to the Dogon, call Sirius B the eye star, since Osiris is represented by an eye. And I just want to bop it in your mind. Think of the all-seeing eye on top of the Egyptian pyramid on the back of a $1 bill. What is that symbolism? What's the meaning, see? So he's considered the companion of Osiris. This is equivalent to say that Osiris is the eye star, provided only that one grants the premise that the existence of Sirius B really was known to the ancient Egyptians, and that the companion of Sirius therefore could ultimately refer to it. Notice, Temple is not coming to a hard and fast conclusion. He is suggesting ideas. He's using linguistics and historical analysis, mythology, etc., to propose a very interesting hypothesis. That is all we are doing. That's all we can do with our limited knowledge. But what a hypothesis, and where it leads. Very eye-opening. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't resist. So the meaning of the Egyptian hieroglyphs and the names for Isis and Osiris were unknown to the earliest dynastic Egyptians themselves, and the names and the signs appear to have a pre-dynastic origin. In other words, they came before the Egyptian pharaohs showed up. They were not invented by the Egyptian pharaohs, is what he's saying. Very interesting. So that means around 3200 BC, or about 5,000 years ago at least. That's a long time ago. There has been no living traditional explanation for the meaning of the names and signs for Isis and Osiris since at least 2800 BC at the latest. We still don't know. This is remarkable. The dog star. Now, this name is a common designation for Sirius, the star, the dog star, throughout known history. The ancient god, Egyptian god Anubis, was a dog god. That is, he had a man's body and a dog's head. He was an embalmer of the dead, and he was also known as Wep Wawet, the opener of the way. The opener of the way. After embalming the dead, did he open the way for the dead to get back where their souls belonged, to their point of origin, the Sirius star system. Interesting. So in discussing Egyptian beliefs, Plutarch, again, one of the ancient historians, I've got his book up here somewhere. It's a huge, Plutarch's Lives. It's a gigantic, huge book. It's a hell of a read. Oh, you really need to read this. This is where he compares, this is Plutarch's Lives. He compares the various lives of a Roman and a Greek, and it is tremendous reading. You get a lot of fascinating, interesting reading about Romulus and the founder of Rome, and all types of fascinating mythology and history in Plutarch. And there is some speculation, interestingly enough, that Luke, the author of the gospel in the New Testament, was Plutarch. I might have to do a video on that. That is exquisitely interesting. Fascinating. So, anyway, in discussing Egyptian beliefs, Plutarch says that Anubis was really the son of Nephthys, the sister to Isis, although he was said to be the son of Isis. Nephthys was considered invisible. Isis was thought of as visible. Now that's interesting. Why? In other words, the visible mother was the stand-in for the invisible mother, who was the true mother, for the simple reason that the invisible mother could not be perceived. They are mythologizing the binary star system of Sirius. Sirius A, the visible star, Sirius B, the invisible one. Plutarch says that Anubis was a horizontal circle. Fantastic. Anubis was a horizontal circle which divides the invisible part, and this invisible part the Egyptians called Nephthys, from the visible, to which they gave the name Isis to the visible. And as this circle equally touches upon the confines of both light and darkness, it may be looked upon as common to them both. That is fascinating. Wow. This is as clear an ancient description as one could expect of a circular orbit called Anubis, of a dark and invisible star called Nephthys around its sister, a light and visible star called Isis. And we know Isis to have been equated with Sirius. What is missing here are the following specific points, which must at this stage still our assumptions, be our assumptions. Number one, the circle is actually an orbit. Number two, the divine characters are actually stars, specifically in this context. So actually, Anubis and Osiris were sometimes identified with one another. Osiris, the companion of Isis, who is sometimes the companion of Sirius, is also sometimes identified with the orbit of the companion of Sirius, and this is reasonable and to be expected. So Isis as Sirius was customarily portrayed by the ancient Egyptians in their paintings as traveling with two companions in the same celestial boat. So they were an entire group in the celestial boat once they died, and they start their journey back home as souls in a celestial boat. And we know Sirius does, according to some astronomers, have two companions, Sirius B, and now they have found a Sirius C. Well, to the Arabs, a companion star to Sirius in the same constellation of the Great Dog was named Wait. Canopus ponderosus, I believe, is what it was, and was supposed to be extremely heavy, almost too heavy to rise over the horizon. Idler calls this an astonishing star name. We are told, not surprisingly, the true companion star of Sirius, Sirius B, is made of super dense matter, which is heavier than any normal matter in the universe, and the weight of this tiny star is the same as that of a gigantic normal star. The Dogon also, as we know, say that Sirius B is very heavy, and they speak of its weight. The Arabs also applied the name Wait to the star. Yes, here it is. The Arabs also applied the name Wait to the star Canopus in the constellation of Argo, the ship, right next to the Dog and Orion, the Argo constellation. They're all bunched up together up in that southern sky in the wintertime. They're up right now. You can see them. Really, truly. Go outside and look south at about 10 o'clock, and they're right out there, right off your porch. So, the Argo was a ship in mythology which carried Danaos and his 50 daughters to Rhodes. The Argo had 50 oarsmen under Jason called Argonauts, and there were 50 oars to the Argo, each with its oarsman Argonaut. The divine oarsman was an ancient Mediterranean motif with sacred meanings. The orbit of Sirius B around Sirius A takes 50 years, which may be related to the use of the number 50 to describe aspects of the Argo. I mean, the name, symbolism, the hieroglyphic, the numerical symbolism, the cosmological symbolism, the constellations, etc. And this is in all of the ancient authors. This is in Apollonius, I believe. I've got his book up there somewhere on the ancient understanding of the constellations. So this is remarkable. There are many divine names and other points in common between ancient Egypt and ancient Sumer, Babylonia. The Sumerians seem to have called Egypt by the name of Magan, M-A-G-A-N, and to have been in contact with it. The chief god of Sumer, named Anu, was pictured as a jackal, very interesting, which is a variation of the dog motif, and was used also in Egypt for Anubis. The dog and the jackal apparently being interchangeable as symbols. The Egyptian form of the name Anubis is Anpu and is similar to the Sumerian Anu, and both of these Egyptian and Sumerian are also jackal gods. The famous Egyptologist Wallace Budge was convinced that Sumer and Egypt both derived their own cultures from a common source which was exceedingly ancient. Now, he's talking pre-Egyptian and pre-Sumerian. That's way back there. This thing goes way back, just so you understand. That's one possible interpretation. So, Anu is also called An, which is a variation. You expect variations in antiquity, of course, by the Sumerians. In Egypt, Osiris is also An, A-N. Fascinating. Remembering that Plutarch said that Anubis, that is Anpu in Egyptian, was a circle. So here the god is described as a geometric figure. Keep that firmly in mind, a circle. It is interesting to note that in Sanskrit, and understand the ancient split from the Indo-Europeans that came north out of the Caucasus Mountains, the split went down into Europe for the Aryan views, and the other group split and went far east down into India as the Vedic views. So they're all related. This is why the Sanskrit is helpful. The word anda means ellipse. Now, Temple says that might be a coincidence. We don't know yet. Wallace Budge says that Anubis represents time. Wow. So not only a geometric shape construct, but time. Anubis represents time. The combined meanings of time and circle for Anubis hint strongly at what? Circular motion, of course. The worship of Anubis was a secret mystery religion restricted to initiates, and we unfortunately don't know its content because it was a mystery. You can get hints and bits and pieces from the ancient pyramid text, the Book of the Dead, the coffin text. I've got my copies around here somewhere. I've got the coffin text back here and the Book of the Dead over there and all that. Fabulous stuff. So Plutarch, who writes of Anubis as an initiate of several mystery religions, and there is reason to believe his information was from well-informed sources. Plutarch himself was a Greek living under the Roman Empire. A variant translation of Plutarch's description of Anubis is that Anubis was a combined relation between Isis and Nephthys. Isis, the light, the visible. Nephthys, the dark, the invisible. And Anubis was a combined relation, the rotation between Sirius A and Sirius B, taking 50 years, would have been Anubis. This is quite fabulously interesting. This has overtones which help in thinking of the circle as an orbit, a combined relation between the star orbiting and the star orbited. So, the Egyptians used the name Horus to describe the power which is assigned to direct the revolution of the sun. Okay. Horus is a circle. Okay, yeah. And realistically, he represents the orbit between the visible and the invisible, etc. Okay, we got that. But it is the power which is assigned to direct the revolution of the sun The sun, ours, our sun, our solar system, as he said in the earlier part of his book, is intimately entwined, remarkably enough, and he shows how, with the Sirius star system. You kind of go, holy cow, there's connections everywhere between Sirius and our sun, and Plutarch talked about that. Man, our astronomers don't even understand there's a connection between the Sirius star system and our solar system. How could Plutarch have known that? He got it from where? The Egyptians. All of the great ancient philosophers, Plutarch, Plato, Socrates, all of them got their knowledge, Pythagoras, out of Egypt. Every one of them, man. Really seriously, and I know that's been poo-pooed by the modern Egyptologists, and they're wrong, but Jeremy Nadler is huge on this. Shamanic Wisdom of the Pyramid Text. Get that book. That's a great book. Well, so, man, I'm telling you. Now, and get this, get how the symbolism works. This is so good. So, the Egyptians conceived of, and they named such specific dynamics an essential point. Plutarch says Anubis guarded like a dog and attended on Isis. This fact, plus Anubis being time and a circle, suggests even more an orbital concept, the ideal form of attendance of the prowling, guarding dog. Wow. This is why I love mythology. This is how mythology needs to work. Yeah, we've lost how to properly interpret mythology. This is sensational. So Aristotle's friend Eudoxus now, and Eudoxus also went to Egypt. That's critical. The Greeks themselves got their knowledge from the Egyptians. That's pretty much understood nowadays. Now, when I was a kid, that was not the conventional wisdom of the Egyptologists. They hated that idea. They wanted the Greeks to be the number one mainstay because, of course, the Greeks with their mathematics and science was much better than that ridiculous woo-woo spirituality. That was the attitude of the Egyptologists. And I mean, Nadler documents that very powerfully and well, but nowadays they've kind of given in to the actual knowledge and way it went. I'm probably going to get yelled at by some people for saying that, but be that as it may, it comes with the territory. So here's what Eudoxus said, Aristotle's friend. The Egyptians had a tradition. So here's the tradition. Zeus. And you go, Zeus? Isn't that the head god of the Greeks? Correct. Notice how broad and wide and deep this stuff goes. For real. Zeus, the chief god of the Greeks, whose name is used by Eudoxus to refer to his Egyptian equivalent, which leaves us wondering which Egyptian god is meant. Is Zeus Osiris? Wow. He could not walk because his legs were grown together. Zeus. Here is a painting from an Etruscan amphora, Royal Museum of Berlin, whereabouts unknown. This is Dagon, Oannes, the ancient deity who appeared out of the sea to give the Sumerians, and hence the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, and eventually the Greeks, to give them civilization. And he too did not have legs because he was a fish man. And this is told by Berosus as well. There's some seals from antiquity of some deities. The memory of who brought these people civilization was not lost. But it was poo-pooed. It was said that during the day they would come to the people, share them their science, their knowledge, their understanding about plants and health food, grains, how to raise the animals so that they have plenty to eat, how to make plows and good tools in order to construct good shelters, etc. They taught them diplomacy, how to get along with your neighbors back and forth. And this is why the ancient civilizations were so stable for so long. And then at the end of the day, after the instruction and teachings, he would go back out to the sea to go to sleep. That is one of the legends from Berosus, the ancient historian. This sounds like an amphibious creature, doesn't it? With a tail for swimming instead of legs for walking. It is like the semi-divine creature Oannes, reputed to have brought civilization to the Sumerians, who also was amphibious, had a tail instead of legs, and retired to the sea at night. Plutarch relates Isis to the Greek goddess Athena, the daughter of Zeus, who was also considered amphibious, and says of them that they were both described as coming from themselves and as self-impelled motion. Athena supervised the Argo, the ship on the water, and placed in its prow the guiding oak timber from Dodona, the sacred Greek oracular spot, which is where the Greek ark landed of Deucalion in the Greek version of the biblical story of Noah. The Argo thus obtained a distinctive self-impelled motion from Athena. Was she in the sea pushing the Argo while the 50 oarsmen rowed, and was she guiding it? Plutarch specifically identifies and relates Athena with Isis. Wow. The earliest version of the Argo epic, which were written before the time of Homer, they're unfortunately lost. The surviving version of the epic is good reading, but relatively recent, 3rd century BC. I do believe that's the Berosus account. Well, the Sumerians, they had 50 heroes. They had 50 great gods. Just as the later Greeks with their Argo had 50 heroes, and the Argo carried 50 daughters of Danaos. So an Egyptian papyrus says the companion of Isis is Lord in the perfect black. The companion of Isis is Lord in the perfect black. Well, that sounds like the invisible Sirius B star. Isis's companion, Osiris, is a dark god, and there is a black Osiris in the myth, without doubt. It's in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. In fact, I wish I had it, darn it, the papyri of Annie, it shows one of the big, beautiful pictures on the wall of the temple with the black Osiris. So, the Trismegistic treatise called The Virgin of the World from Egypt refers to what they call the Black Rite, R-I-T-E. And this is connected with the Black Osiris as the highest degree of secret initiation possible in the ancient Egyptian religion. It is the ultimate secret of the mysteries of Isis. This treatise says Hermes came to Earth to teach men civilization. Hermes, the Greek messenger god, the one who wore the slippers with the wings. Hermes, who was later equated with Mercury, Quicksilver, the metal. He is the one that came to Earth to teach men civilization. And then again, what did he do? He mounted to the stars. He went back home. No, literally, it says that. Going back to his home and leaving behind the mystery religion of Egypt with its celestial secrets, which were someday to be decoded. So there is evidence that the Black Rite did deal with astronomical matters. So the Black Rite concerned astronomical matters. The Black Osiris and Isis, and the evidence mounts that it may thus have concerned the evidence and existence of Sirius B. And we have now taken the astronomical knowledge and ideas of Sirius B, and we now understand much better the Sirius star system. So, quite a remarkable background chapter from Robert Temple. Fun stuff. I will keep trying to go through several of these chapters. For me, this is fun stuff. I apologize if it bores you guys, but it does not bore me, and so I'm going to keep sharing it because I believe it has terrific relevance to today's UFOs right here, right now, even the drones in New Jersey, which are orbs as well. I believe there is relevance, seriously, if not a connection. So we look at all sides. We look at all aspects. We are having fun, enjoying, exploring the ancient mythology, the ancient religion, the ancient philosophy, the ancient history, the ancient politics, the ancient science, and coming up through the medieval ages and up into our day, and continue consuming as much knowledge as we can so that we can therefore expand, so that we can comprehend the new, very necessary, needed knowledge that is hopefully coming from our UFO neighbors who have apparently arrived. They're very real, and we need to get ready for the new revelation because we may not like it a lot. And the reason why is because that means we have to change. And that's one thing we are lousy at. We suck at changing, but that's what we're going to have to do. So hopefully this will give us some context and help us out with our up and coming changes that very well could become very real very quick. So thanks for watching the Backyard Professor videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. I've got a lot more along this vein with this types of information that I'm going to share with you. Appreciate all your support. Welcome to the new subscribers. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video with everybody who you can. And I will be back just as soon as I'm able to put more of this stuff together. I'm going to go read the book. Yeah. I'm going to go read the book, A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple. We have some discussing to do. Woohoo! Hasta la vista, baby. Hope I don't get a copyright strike for stealing Schwartz's comment.